Welcome back to the program. We're here in the UK as Deputy Prime Minister Dominic Raab says he's requested an independent investigation into 2 formal complaints about his behaviour, becoming the latest case of alleged bullying to put pressure on Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Mr. Raab said he had been notified of 2 separate complaints, one from when he was Foreign Minister and one from his previous tenure as Justice Minister. Some of the officials who've worked for him say he was a tough and demanding boss, with others being quoted by local media as saying he was rude, aggressive and a bully. Raab said in a letter he attached to his tweets that he had never tolerated bullying and had always sought to empower teams working in his department. Speaking to lawmakers today, he said he has behaved professionally.
Look, in terms of the economic challenges which are global, caused by COVID and the war in Ukraine, we've got a plan to grip inflation, balance the books and drive economic growth. If we listen to the Honourable Lady, debt would go up, unemployment would go up and working Britons would pay the price. She asked about the complaints. I received notification this morning. I immediately asked the Prime Minister to set up an independent inquiry into them. I'm confident I behaved professionally throughout, but of course I will engage thoroughly and look forward, Mr. Speaker, may I say, look forward to transparently addressing any claims that have been made.
We'll stay a little longer in Britain. Surging household energy bills and food prices have pushed the country's inflation to a 41-year high, according to data published a day before Finance Minister Jeremy Hunt announces tax hikes and spending cuts to control price growth. The Office for National Statistics says consumer prices rose 11.1% in the 12 months to October, the most since October 1981, and a big jump from 10.1% in September. The ONS says inflation would have risen to around 13.8% in October had the government not intervened to limit the price of household energy bills to £2,500 a year on average. The Finance Minister says tough decisions are required to tackle the rise in prices. Remember the 11-year-old activist who confronted the UK Energy Minister Zach Goldsmith yesterday regarding the arrest of climate activists who protest. A journalist caught up with her to find out how she felt about being snubbed by him and why she is passionate about climate issues.
Yesterday, I confronted with Mr. Goldsmith and the Honourable Minister of Energy, Climate and Environment, and I asked him a question that when his government will release the climate activists who are protesting against the oil, gas and new gas license in UK, and then he just ran away without answering my question. I followed him for a couple of minutes and then he answered to me that and later he answered to me that he didn't know anything. He had no idea about it, and climate activists should not be arrested, should not get arrested for peaceful protest. And also he can't do anything. But I want to ask him that why is he a minister if he can't do anything? Why he is in COP27?
Kango Jam is not the only child passionate about climate issues. Children are well represented in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. Organizers say they have been given greater importance with a designated youth envoy and a pavilion for children and youth at the conference. President of the African Development Bank, Dr. Akiwumi Adesina, says the right of African countries to use their natural gas reserves should be reflected in any deal at the COP27 climate talks. Agreeing a deal on fossil fuels is among the key sticking points at the talks, with some countries, including India, keen to face down the use of all such fuels, including gas. A preliminary document from the conference hosts arrived late on Monday and made no mention of fossil fuels. While it forms the basis of any agreement, the all-important final wording has yet to be hammered out. Even if Africa were to triple its production of natural gas from current levels, its contribution to global emissions would only rise by 0.67%, according to Dr. Adesina.
The point of gas that you were saying, yes, what this has shown us is this. we've got to diversify energy sources. Also that it's not just about access to energy, it's about affordability of energy, it's also about energy security. Therefore, it is very important that Europe diversifies its energy sources. And guess what? Africa can be a very important source of Europe in terms of access to gas. My interest is how Africa uses natural gas as part of its energy mix to provide electricity for 600 million people today that don't have access to electricity. But let me just be clear. When it comes to the issue of gas, the African Development Bank, we are the leader on this continent on renewable energy. We are putting 85% of our resources into renewable energy generation. But I recognize that renewables are very highly variable in terms of supply. So you got to make sure you have a balanced energy grid. And so mixing gas is very important for Africa. But I know some people will say, well, if you use gas, in fact, you probably will be contributing to more emissions, but not in the case of Africa, because even if Africa uses all of its natural gas for power, you know how much it would contribute to emissions? 0.67. That's all. So Africa must have natural gas to complement its renewable energy to assure access, affordability, and security of power supply. I think we must recognize the special nature of Africa. Africa has the highest level of energy poverty in the world. We will maximize the sun, we will maximize wind, we will maximize hydro and geothermal potential, yes.
Brazil's Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva today received a warm welcome at the COP27 summit in Egypt, where he made his first speech since being elected as the country's next president. Hundreds of people crowded into an exhibition hall where Lula was meeting Brazilian governors of Amazon states. The crowd chanted, "Ole, ole, ole, Lula, Lula," before the event began. Wearing a suit and tie, Lula arrived with a light security detail and walked to the edge of the crowd, reaching out to shake outstretched hands. He is scheduled to speak to the UN summit at large, delivering the message Brazil is back as a leader on climate change. Let's bring in our environment correspondent, Ayola Kasim, who is at Sharm El Sheikh at the moment, from where she's reaching us from. Ayola, great to see you. First of all, why is it, I mean, I know that Brazil has been on the forefront of climate change issues, but how important was it having Lula da Silva himself at the conference today?
Well, he just told the conference that in fact that Brazil is coming back into the Paris Agreement. Remember, the former president sort of put them out. So he said with this election, people have chosen that they put the protection of the Amazon at the forefront. And that's why everybody is so excited for him to be here. And he didn't disappoint during his speech. He told them that they are back. He talked about countries like Nigeria, Chad. Those are the forefront of the impact of climate change, that they need the support, and he's hoping that development.
Oh boy. And there we go again with the internet. Again, Ayola, we seem to have lost connection with you. We'll try to reconnect. In other stories now, Kuwait has put 7 people to death in a mass execution, according to the state-run news agency, making it the first execution since 2017, despite appeals from human rights organizations for clemency. Those inmates who were hanged today were 4 Kuwaitis, a Pakistani, a Syrian and an Ethiopian. 2 of the 7 were women. It was the first execution since January 25th, 2017, when 7 people were also hanged, including 1 member of the royal Al-Sabah family, which has ruled the country for 2.5 centuries. Prominent rights organization Amnesty International called for the executions to be halted on Tuesday, saying they were a violation of the right to life and the ultimate cruel, inhumane and degrading punishment, and that Kuwait should abolish the death penalty entirely. And Ayala Kasim is back with more now on President-elect Lula da Silva's presence at the conference. So you mentioned, he in his speech to the UN earlier, just a while ago, he did mention Nigeria, right?
Yes, he said that they developed, countries that are facing the impact of climate change, and he mentioned Nigeria, he does state Chad, and the rest of them, Pakistan, like they need the support they need to adapt to the impact of climate change and to combat the losses that we are already incurred in the country due to the impact of climate change. And he's saying that the delegates, the delegates, they should not disappoint in their deliberation, in their negotiation. That they should give this country at the forefront that give it impact. They should make sure they give us what we want at the start.
Yeah. And Ayala, as the conference begins to wind down, what feelings are you getting about, what could be the outcome of this COP at the end of the day?
Well, the negotiators have been I've been speaking to earlier today. It's still like, well, the money, they're not really committing to give them the money. And it looks as if we are going into overtime, because a text was just released earlier, and what is in it is like not what we want. It's not what people are requesting for. That's what we are being given at this moment in time. They're still discussing. They're still around 4 p.m. today. That's local time here. They're still talking about the adaptation finance and how it look like the loss and damage. So that's the level we're still on a high. And it appears that the people from the impacted countries, like Africa, for instance, they're already giving up. They're saying, okay, we are setting foundation for next year's COP. Already looking forward to next year, hoping that this will be the foundation, and hopefully next year they'll get what they want. So that's what it is like here at the moment.
Yeah, and I think our producers are just in love with the Brazilian President-elect Lula da Silva showing up at COP27. Ayala, we'll let you go. Challenges are covering conferences like this. One of them is the internet, isn't it? Well, thank you for pushing through it and for giving us the update.
Nice talking to you.
Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni is assuring foreign visitors that the Ebola outbreak in the East African country will be brought under control. In an address to the country, the president notes that the foreign tourists are cancelling bookings and international conferences had been cancelled or moved to other countries. He says the epidemic is localized with active cases in just 6 out of 146 districts across Uganda. He further states that a list of people exposed to the virus had been provided to immigration authorities to prevent them from international travel. Some 141 cases with 55 deaths have been recorded since the outbreak was confirmed in September. Meanwhile, the second batch of Kenyan troops have left for the Democratic Republic of Congo and are due to arrive, well, they should have arrived by now. They're part of a regional force deployed for a peacekeeping mission in the east of the country. Armed groups have stepped up attacks in recent months, raising concern about the threats they pose to the region's security. More than 900 Kenyan troops will be based near the town of Goma in the volatile region. Burundi soldiers have been operating in South Kivu province since August. The Kenyan troops will be in North Kivu province, where the M23 rebels have seized more territory in recent months and displaced thousands of people. The Congolese government, however, is set to resume talks with representatives of various armed groups later this month in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Prior to the expected announcement from the former U.S. president, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said criticism aimed at him was just noise. During a public appearance in Fort Walton Beach, DeSantis was asked what he thought about Trump's scheduled announcement of a possible bid for the White House, in addition to what the former president had said about him. He replied, "That's just the nature of it. When you're getting things done, you take incoming fire." DeSantis also referred to election results in Florida as a blueprint for other states where the Republican Party was defeated. Trump has given the derisive nickname Ron DeSanctimonious to Ron DeSantis, who won the midterms last week.
Learned in this job is when you're leading, when you're getting things done, yeah, you take incoming fire. That's just the nature of it. I roll out of bed in the morning. I've got corporate media outlets that have a spasm, just the fact that I'm getting up in the morning, and it's constantly attacking. And this is just what's happened. I don't think any governor got attacked more, particularly by corporate media, than me over my 4-year term. And yet, I think what you learn is all that's just noise. And really what matters is, are you leading? Are you getting in front of issues? Are you delivering results for people? And are you standing up for folks? And if you do that, then none of that stuff matters. And that's what we've done. We focused on results and leadership. And, you know, at the end of the day, I would just tell people to go check out the scoreboard from last Tuesday night.
Our Washington correspondent Maria Bird joins us now. Maria, well, the spotlight is on the Republican Party this week, isn't it? I mean, they're making so much noise over there. It almost seems like the Democratic Party does not exist at this time.
You're exactly correct. You know, this is a time where the Republican Party, I think it was expected, as you said earlier, is that this November 15th date that former President Trump gave as a date he would be renouncing something. Everyone knew what that announcement was going to be. It's also very interesting to see that it has been speculated the governor of Florida, DeSantis, would be running for president in this next cycle. And so to see the two of them already sparring at each other means that we will probably highly likely see a competition between the two of them running in 2024. But this also does bring highlight to the fact that the Republican Party is not united. And is that going to have a major impact on the next 2024 election cycle? Because we also know that many people were not satisfied with the former president's administration. And we also know that some of those hardcore, Cheney Republicans will not be in alignment with the former president. So I think this also could be a challenge for them as they look to being able to prepare for this next election cycle. And this also will give Democrats, as you said, they've been very quiet, but they're watching, because you will begin to see who they will support and who those candidates will be for 2024.
I guess that's a viable political strategy in the end. But there's also one more person who's probably going to join the race in the Republican Party, and that's former Vice President Mike Pence. His book is out. He is likely to announce that he will be running for president. And he's been speaking about, his relationship with the former president and what happened on the morning of January 6th and, the events that happened afterwards. How much of a heavyweight is he in the party? I mean, we know Donald Trump is, huge in the Republican Party. DeSantis just beginning to gather, that support, that clout needed for the elections. What about Mike Pence?
Well, Mike Pence is a part of the original Republican Party, if you can consider the Cheney administrations. And so I think that former President Trump needed him when he was running for office the first time, because he needed to have someone that was a long-term politician, someone that the Republican Party supported and respected. The real question is going to be, once we get through this evening, there is going to be a roundtable town hall with the former vice president that will go into detail about his book, but also to your point about whether or not his run for election in 2024. And I think that will give us some insight into what he's thinking, what his strategies are. I think that there are many independents and those who are in the middle and those who are not satisfied with the Democratic Party that might consider him as being a viable candidate. And so that I think we'll begin to see over the coming months. And I think it was strategic that he decided to have his debut after the former president.
Right, indeed. And President Biden has only 2 years left. The Democrats also have 2 years to make up their minds who they present in 2024. But he's already said this is not a referendum on his government, speaking about the midterms. What do analysts think about his performance so far?
Well, his performance thus far, I mean, he has a myriad of highlights that he has exposed and he has brought forth. We know that he is actually working right now. We know that China is going to be one of his next areas of interest. Asia is going to become a highlight for him as it relates to international relations. I think that he knows that if he wants to be a viable candidate for the next election cycle, he's going to have to rectify and work toward some relations with China, and we can begin to see that already. And so I think that's what his focus is going to be, the economic infrastructure of the U.S., and specifically the role we play in the global economy, because if he can find a way to adjust inflation issues, finding ways for Americans to feel good about the economy, feel good about the money they're making, feeling good about the jobs that are available, I think that he will then be able to really not only have himself in a good position for re-election, but also have the Democratic Party in a good position for the next election cycle.
Maria, thanks again. We'll be watching, and so will you.
Yeah.
Let's hang on in America. The space agency NASA has launched its most powerful ever rocket from Cape Canaveral in Florida. The 100-meter tall Artemis vehicle climbed skyward in a stupendous mix of light and sound. Its objective was to hurl an astronaut capsule in the direction of the moon. The spacecraft, known as Orion, is unscrewed for this particular flight, but if everything works, it should be as it should. People will climb aboard for future missions that go to the lunar surface. Today's flight followed 2 previous launch attempts in August and September that were aborted during the countdown because of technical woes. Now, just a while ago, NASA Administrator Bill Nelson praised the rocket launch, calling it the next beginning and the Artemis generation. Named for the ancient Greek goddess of the hunt, the Apollo's twin sister Artemis aims to return astronauts to the moon's surface as early as 2025. It's expected to splash down at sea on December 11th.
Flight Artemis 1. SLS now traveling 607 miles per hour. You're looking at 8.8 million pounds of maximum thrust. Quiet here in the loops in mission control. The 4 core stage engines throttling down ahead of passing through max Q.
The Nigerians have been very excited. The 2023 Grammy Award nominations have been launched. African stars Tems, Burna Boy, Rocky Dawuni and Angelique Kidjo are all up for awards. We're, of course, rooting for our own. Nigerian singer-songwriter Tems has been nominated for her writing on Beyoncé's Renaissance album and for rapper Drake's Wait For You song, which is nominated for Record of the Year. Burna Boy bags his 3rd Grammy nomination in a row for Best Global Music Performance and is also nominated for his album Love Damini. Meanwhile, Beyoncé and Adele are the international stars to beat as they go head-to-head for all the major prizes. Both artists have been nominated for Album of the Year, Adele for her sumptuous 4th album, 30, and Beyoncé for her dance floor opus, Renaissance. Adele's single Easy on Me and Beyoncé's Break My Soul are each up for Song and Record of the Year. The nominations were announced on Tuesday, and Beyoncé leads the pack with 9 overall, including nods in the dance and R&B categories. And that's the world today. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.